Good evening, everybody. I want to welcome you all to this evening's webinar, which is brought to you by the advisory services in the Teagasc Roscommon Longford region. This evening's webinar is titled Achieving a Sustainable Fertiliser Plan for 2024. And we have two speakers covering that topic. The format for this evening the webinar will run for approximately an hour. We'll have about 5 minutes for an introduction. We'll have 20 minutes each for each presenter. And then at the end of the webinar, we will have approximately 15 minutes for questions. So it'll last approximately an hour. If you're watching this webinar on your phone, just ensure that you have your phone charged for that period. This webinar is being recorded, and the recording will be available to you all on our YouTube channel, Roscommon Longford, Teagasc Roscommon Longford YouTube channel. And there'll be also links on our social media pages on Facebook and Twitter. This webinar is the second in a four-part series of webinars this spring, and the remaining two webinars will be taking place in March. On the 11th of March, we are looking at an update of farm schemes, and then on the 2nd of April, which is actually a Tuesday, so we'll be looking at going into more details on SCEP and also looking at the future beef Teagasc future beef farmers that are within this region, and looking at how they are progressing over the last number of years. So keep an eye out on our social media channels for updates on those up-and-coming webinars. This evening, our two speakers are both working in the Teagasc office in Longford. We have James Mimnagh, who is a climate and sustainability advisor. And secondly, we have John Conway, who is a dairy advisor based in the Longford office also. And we also have Nathan McCartin, who is a Drystock Advisor in Longford and is in charge of the Q&A session that'll be taking place at the end. So if you look at the bottom of your screens, you have a Q&A function where you can type in your questions. The questions will be all answered live. We won't be typing back any answers to questions this evening. And you can be typing in your questions as you think of them if it's during the presentation, but we won't be answering them until later on. So keep those questions coming in as you think of them. Okay, so we'll start first of all with James Mimnagh, and I'll ask James to start sharing his presentation there, and Nathan and John can just switch off your cameras there, and we'll get going.
Now, is that coming up there for you, okay, Sean?
Yeah, just put it into slideshow mode there.
Oh, yeah.
Just,
How's that coming up for you there now?
yeah, that looks good. Great, James.
Okay. Okay, thanks very much for the introduction, Sean. And as Sean alluded to already, my name is James Mimnagh. I'm a climate and sustainability advisor based in the Longford office. And I cover the region, Roscommon, Longford, as a whole. So I suppose this presentation, I'm going to hopefully, well, it's titled, I suppose, Reducing Your Farm's Impact on Climate Change. And through the presentation, you'll hopefully be able to see, I suppose, ways your farm can possibly reduce greenhouse gas and ammonia emissions and save money as well in the process. And some of you may have heard this presentation or some part of it, but it's slightly different at maybe an acres course or out at a workshop. And some of you might see me again, I suppose, out at similar workshops in the future as well. But just to, I suppose, kick it off and set the scene, I suppose, as to I suppose why we need to, I suppose, reduce greenhouse gas and ammonia emissions. There was, I suppose, the Paris Agreement that came into force a number of years ago in COP21. This is a legally binding international treaty on climate change. It was adopted at COP21 in Paris on the 12th of December 2015 and came into force in November 16. And its goal is to limit global warming to below 2 degrees Celsius, preferably to 1.5 degrees compared to pre-industrial level. So that kind of sets the scene as to why we need to hit these targets. So if you look at the average annual air temperature for Ireland, I suppose from 1895 to 2018, you can see, I suppose, each yellow dot is the annual average temperature that's measured in a particular year. And the blue line across is the normal temperature from 1981 to 2010. The linear, I suppose, the white line heading up through the graph is, I suppose, the annual average temperature. And as you can see, I suppose there's far more, I suppose, yellow dots in the upper part of the graph in the more latter years than back previously. So I suppose it gives you an indication that annual air temperature is rising as the years progress. So Ireland has, I suppose, a 51% greenhouse gas a reduction target to achieve by 2030. And as part of this, agriculture is coming in at 25%. So there's certain other sectors have to make up the, I suppose, balance here. The renewable sector, I suppose, has to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 75% and the transport sector by 50%. Every other sector is ahead of agriculture, but agriculture is the biggest emitter of greenhouse gases in Ireland as a sector. So our 25% will achieve big gains nationally if we can hit that. So how do we do that? It's a pretty onerous task, but we'll achieve that by using the analogy of how you eat an elephant. It's one bite at a time. So we have to get to that 25%, and as I'll outline later on in the presentation, it is achievable if we all work together towards this target. So the emission drivers, there's, I suppose, I've took, I suppose, three elements of where emissions are, I suppose, contributed toward in agriculture. So fertilizer use, I suppose, number of dairy cows on the ground, and then lime use as well. So if we look at these three aspects from 2019 onwards to last year, we can see there was a reduction of 10% in fertilizer use. If we take fertilizer use firstly, now that was coming off the back of 2018, and in 2018 we had a drought, so there was a large amount of fertilizer used. There was extensions on fertilizer application to the end of September, and there was quite a substantial drought in the middle of the summer, and we kept on applying fertilizer through that as well. So we came back down to pretty much more normal territory in 2019. We increased fertilizer use in 20 and 2021, but there was a dramatic drop in 2022 due to fertilizer price. And this further, I suppose, drove on in 2023 as well with an 18% reduction. So we've dramatically reduced fertilizer use, and that's a credit to farmers out there that have taken initiatives such as clover incorporation and more prudent use of fertilizer I suppose maybe a bit more P and K applied as well, and more lime as well to grow the grass that they need rather than just kind of driving out chemical in. So farmers deserve a lot of credit for the reductions in fertilizer, and that needs to keep on going. Dairy cows then as well, just out of interest, I suppose, obviously dairy cow numbers have been increasing since quota abolition in 2015, and but they have started to stabilise. So if you can see there was about a 2.8, 3.2% increase year on year. Back a number of years ago, but in 2022 there was only a 0.9% increase, and last year they only increased by like 500 head of dairy cows, so it's not significant of a percentage to incorporate into this graph. Lime use then, I suppose, fell by 25% in 2019, so there was there was ample opportunity to apply lime in 2018 due to the reasons I outlined before, the drought and that kind of thing, which is fair enough. But there was a bit of an increase then in 20 and 2021, and a little bit of an increase in 22. The 4% increase last year is a bit disappointing, considering there's a lot of I suppose media focus on lime due to the Lyman program, but weather was just so bad that it negated that, and we may see an increase this year with regard to that. So the greenhouse gas reduction percentage change. So you can see there, I suppose we reduced greenhouse gases by 4% in 19. They rose in 2021, but they have been reducing steadily for the last 2 years, and we need to keep that improvement going as well. So this data is taken from the EPA greenhouse gas emissions and is provisional data. Now, just looking at the main greenhouse gases and the three of these and how potent they are in the atmosphere. Methane, well, I suppose if you take carbon dioxide first, the bottom of the graph, if we call that, I suppose, per kilo CO2 equivalent, we call that emitting factor of 1. Now, that carbon dioxide contributes 5% of Irish agricultural greenhouse gases. So it's not the most significant. If we look at then methane, the top row, that contributes 65% of greenhouse gases, and nitrous oxide 30% of greenhouse gases. And nitrous oxide is very potent. It's 268 times more potent than CO2, while methane is 28 times more potent. CO2 stays in the atmosphere for about 1,000 years. Methane stays in the atmosphere for about 12 years, and nitrous oxide for about 100 years. So while carbon dioxide you can say is not that potent, it does stay up there for a long time, and the other one's a little bit shorter, but are very damaging. Now, the sources of the agricultural greenhouse gas, so they come from three main sources. So it's enteric fermentation, which is methane production in the rumen, about 62.5%. Agricultural soil, so that's the application of fertilizers on agricultural soils, about 20%, and manure management, about 11.5%. So these are the three key areas. If we can focus on these three key areas, we'll end up reducing our emissions substantially. So I suppose just a little bit of a word on these. We'll talk a little bit about fertilizer in a bit, but manure management, I suppose you can see the little picture of the trail and shoe there. So it's about applying your slurries as much as possible in the springtime of the year and by low emission application. Now, I suppose rules have come in, legislation has come in to try and capture, I suppose, a large number of farmers to allow them to or to maybe force them to put out slurry by low emission. But if you can put it out that way, it will allow you to grow a lot more grass, give you an extra 3 units per 1,000 gallons of nitrogen as well when you apply that. With enteric fermentation, so methane production in the rumen, this is really essentially about not having, I suppose, kind of the passenger livestock as such on the farm. If you're calving down heifers at 3 years of age, be it in a dairy situation or a suckler situation, you should try and have, I suppose, calve down your heifers at 2 years of age, so that therefore you'll wipe out one category of livestock on your farm, that 2 to 3 year old replacement heifers. If you've got these lucky cows, this suckler cow that she had a great calf, but she didn't go and calf last year, and you're running around again. She's a problem because she's not contributing towards your, I suppose, towards your profit on your farm, but she's emitting greenhouse gases while she's there, and she's an unproductive animal, and so trying to wipe out some of these low productive or non-productive passenger animals is key here. The national herd, I suppose, just when we're talking about national herd, what has happened to it, just for information, I suppose. If we look at the change from 2018 to 2023 in terms of dairies, dairy cows have increased by 165,000 dairy cows. Suckler cows have reduced by something similar. So it's really swapped one for the other. Livestock units have decreased as a whole, and head of livestock as well. So the livestock units means, I suppose, we take the young stock and we don't count them as one full livestock unit, obviously, and we do it that way. So you can see the percentage change. the amount of livestock are decreasing year on year slightly. So the roadmap to 2030, we already alluded to, I suppose, that our target of reaching a 25% reduction by 2030, and we need to reduce by 5 to 7 megatons of CO2. So we started off at 23.3 megatons of CO2 in 2018, and 2018 was a very high emitting year, which it's quite lucky for us that that was picked, so that we can reduce from it. We need to reach 2030 and emit 17.25 megatons of CO2. Now, how will we get this 25% reduction from 18 to 2030? So we implement technologies that are in the MAC, and I'll show you a MAC later on in the presentation. And them technologies that are already there in the MAC, like low emission soil spreading, like protected urea and reducing chemical fertilizer, and by using clover and that kind of thing, can help with reducing CO2 by 2 megatons. The almost ready technologies, which are feed additives and earlier slaughter, can help to reduce by 1 to 1.5 megatons of CO2. Early stage technologies, which are there at the moment and will become more prevalent, are feed additives of pasture, breeding lower emitting animals, which will add another 1.5 to 3 megatons. And eventually we'll get to 2050 and or I suppose beyond 2030, the target will then shift to 2050, where we're going to look at becoming having agriculture in a climate neutral state. So look at these early stage and almost ready technologies will become more and more prevalent as we go. There's quite a successful results coming out of Grange on feed additives up there. So they'll become more prevalent. Now, the MAC, I mentioned the MAC. So the MAC is basically the marginal abatement cost curve. And this, don't get too hung up on the X and the Y axis in terms of the numbers there. But what this means is the width of the bar means the amount of mitigation in terms of the amount of reduction of greenhouse gases that can be achieved by selecting some of these measures. So the likes of animal health, fertilizer type, that one there is EBI that's covering it there. The whether the bar is below or above the line means it's a financial gain to you to implement that, like the dairy EBI, or the beef maternal replacement index there on the extreme left, or extended graze. If the graph is above the line, it's a financial cost to you, such as, I suppose, using sex semen there, it's a more expensive straw. Now, if you're getting the results out of that in a dairy situation, you could get better quality animals to sell in terms of beef animals. So look, the building blocks to reduce farm emissions, I suppose there's a number of these that I lay out here, but fertilizer, and I'll not talk about this in detail because John is going to discuss this topic with you later. But I suppose the fertilizer type, in terms of it must, I suppose, we're trying to switch farmers over towards protected urea. The timing of the application of fertilizer as well, and the quantity of fertilizer that we apply, so a reduction in chemical N required. But for protected urea replacing the can and urea, and I'll have a couple of graphs on this. And I suppose the timing is pretty key. That you're not allowing it to be wasted, and you're applying it early, I suppose, in the year as well, and you're not running it too late towards the deadline, that kind of thing. Slurry management, slurry storage as well, talking about deadlines as well, that you apply your slurry early in the year and you're not running around in late September trying to get it all out. The timing of this and the application methods we already discussed, low emission storage spread. Grazing management, then there's extended grazing, I suppose, grass measuring and grass quality. So getting animals into to graze grass at the correct sward height is key. That production will be much better when we actually hit these key metrics. And to do that, we need to get paddock infrastructure right. We need to get our paddocks laid out, and proper roadways there, and proper fencing up and all that kind of thing. Clover multi-species, so establishment of clover or multi-species swards can have a significant impact on reducing chemical fertilizer nitrogen. And we've farmers in what's called a Clover 150 program. So that means that we can apply 150 kilos of nitrogen compared to the ordinary 250 kilos that could have been applied. So we bring them back down by 100 kilos of nitrogen per hectare. Biodiversity, it's key to maintain biodiversity in terms of with hedgerow management, with trees and high value nature. And soil fertility is very, very important with lime, phosphorus, and potassium, so that we're hitting we're getting our right amount of P and K out for our silage or our grazing ground, and also then the pH of the soil is at that 6.3 or 6.5 if you want clover to be there and maintain. Animal productivity, so animal breeding, so EBI in terms of a dairy situation, and I suppose the carcass beef value for the beef side of things, and that. So look, it is very important to be hitting these metrics in terms of breeding quality animals, whether you're a dairy farmer, suckler farmer, sheep farmer. Having an animal health plan is important, and adhering to it and getting the vaccines administered in a timely manner as well. Water quality. So it is very, very important that we keep water quality, good and improving. We really need to do this because you can see, I suppose you've heard in the media about um, I suppose the derogation and all that, but we need to have correct buffer zones at application of slurry and fertilizers and sprays, and timing of these applications is critical as well, and keeping an eye on weather. So there's farm profitability there, and the key driver for all of these is the farmer. Nobody else is going to do it. The farmer has to implement these actions there to achieve what can be achieved. So with regard to animal productivity, when we take EBI for example there, every €10 increase in EBI is €20 profit per cow per year and a 1% reduction in greenhouse gases. There's a more mature herd, if you adhere to this, a higher milk solids per cow and a lower replacement rate, keeping at that 20% replacement rate. The same output with less animals. Similar on the suckler side of things, the maternal replacement index is there. We can have an improved health and survival and a shorter calving interval. We need to get that calf per cow per year, one calf 365 days, and quality as well. So grassland management. So extended graze, and every extra week grass is a reduction of 1% in greenhouse gas emissions. And summer grass quality, we spoke about quality there before. So 1,400 kilos of dry matter per hectare, that's normal grazing grass in the mid-season, versus 2,000. 2,000 is getting into nearly a silage situation, or it's a paddock that's skipped. So you need to be hitting that 1,400 there, because it's very easy to see, I suppose, a drop in milk or I suppose not as good a performance with weanlings if that's to be achieved, and a 6 to 8 week peak growth, and at 1 to 2% greenhouse gas footprint reduction. Meal feeding. So meal feeding, a reduction of 50 to 100 kilos of meal per cow can have a 1% reduction in greenhouse gases, and higher silage, higher dry matter digestibility silage and lower fiber can lower emissions also. So these are two very important aspects, particularly on a suckler or beef finishing side of things. So fertilizer is the key thing out there, really. Protected urea is cheaper than CAN. The most expensive fertilizer per straight in terms of straight nitrogen out there is CAN, followed by protected urea, followed by urea. So it's a no-brainer to replace CAN with protected urea. A quarter of the greenhouse gases and ammonia emissions of CAN is contained in protected urea. So using 100% protected urea in a dairy situation can lead to 7 to 8% greenhouse gas emission reduction. And reducing by 25% can get another 5%. Now, we talked about protected urea and why, right? So there's a couple of graphs here, and don't get too bogged down in the kind of the writing associated with it. But these three, I suppose, is CAN, urea, and protected urea. And we can see here that this is the nitrous oxide emission factor. So you see CAN produces a large amount of nitrous oxide, while urea and protected urea are quite low in terms of what they produce. So now That being said, urea emits large quantities of ammonia. So the ammonia is an indirect greenhouse gas, and it's largely contributed to nitrous oxide. So by reducing or by eliminating the urea, we'll eliminate the ammonia production, or not eliminate, but massively reduce it. Replace urea with protected urea to reduce ammonia, and replace CAN with protected urea to reduce greenhouse gases overall. So this is essentially kind of one and the same, but it's putting the two of them side by side. So you can see here on the graph I'll actually just show that one first. But if you switch from urea to protected urea only, right, you can see there urea has a substantial losses of ammonia, and the protected urea in the can are quite low. But then on the flip side, then if you use CAN, then you've got a large amount of nitrous oxide. So the key, I suppose, common denominator here in these two graphs is protected urea. Protected urea is low for both 78% and 71% respectively. Right, so it's a no-brainer to switch from both urea and CAN to protected urea. So soil fertility. Lime, phosphorus, and potassium, getting these correct can save you 80 kilos of nitrogen per hectare, which is €170 per hectare, which is pretty substantial. Clover, reducing chemical nitrogen can save you up to 100 kilos of nitrogen per hectare, and even above that as well. I've seen farmers reduce by 150 kilos, and that can equate to €215 per hectare. Mixed species swards, slurry spreading as well. The timing of this and the method can give you, as I alluded to before, an extra 3 units per 1,000 gallons with the timing, and with the method can it give you another 3 units per of nitrogen per 1,000 gallons. So you can actually achieve much more nitrogen from your slurry by going with low emission rather than splash plate. So the role of clover, in regard, and I only have a couple more slides left, but in terms of the sward, the nitrogen can fix 100 to 150 kilos of nitrogen per hectare per year, and can reduce chemical nitrogen fertilizer. If you've got swards that are if you're interested in sown clover, just talk to your advisor or talk to me in Longford office there. We can get a plan in place for you, but don't go mad on putting a load of paddocks or a load of fields in with clover. Focus on one or two for the moment, get them right, and then you can progress from there. Because if you do too much, there's certain things you need to do in terms of not having heavy covers over the winter, getting in pretty regularly to graze them, so you get light down to the base of the plant. And I suppose you need to get it into good quality grass, because you need your animals to graze that grass down to allow the light to hit the clover. So look, the worst thing you could do is go mad with the clover, put it into maybe old pasture, do too much, and then get disillusioned with it. So, look, start small with it. In regard to the animal performance, there's better dry matter intake, feed quality, animal performance, and herbage growth. And this is what 26% white clover looks like in the summer. So you need about 23% clover content to have any material difference in terms of reduction of chemical N or animal performance. So you need about 25% clover that looks like 50 in the mid-season. This is, I suppose, grass only versus grass clover trial results in 2019. And look, it's in a dairy situation, but you don't just tune out because of that. I picked this because it's very easy to look at metrics and look at performance based on grass only versus grass clover. So the grass only in the two middle sections is highlighted. Grass only with 250 means grass only with 250 kilos of nitrogen per hectare, and grass clover 150 drops your amount of chemical nitrogen by 100 kilos, so that the clover is making up that 100 kilos. And you can see there right at the bottom there, milk solids. There's an extra 10, 11 kilos of milk solids per cow, and extra yield as well in terms of kilos of milk only as well. So that shows that you can get as much milk from the cows with a reduction of 100 kilos of nitrogen. Now this is just an ammonia MAC. It shows that there's 80% from the two measures, just from two measures on this MAC. So low emission slurry spreading, doing already. Need to keep that going. Need to extend this, and then replacing urea with protected urea. That's really simple as well. Just replace it all with protected urea. Lower crude protein at grass, then just regulation there for derogation farmers, cost saving, lower emissions, better performance. Slurry amendments works, but still work to be done to identify best practice here. In summary, we can lower greenhouse gas emission. Lower greenhouse gas emissions are compatible with good farming and profit. Get the basics right. So get your soil fertility, your herd fertility, animal health and performance, and grass management right. These are easy enough done. It's just about focusing on where needs to work. Go after the quick wins. Switch to protected urea and I suppose higher P and K compounds if you're using compounds like 18612, 10-10-20, 07-30, things like that. Avoid your 27s and your 24s. So your cut swarts and your pasture swarts. Try and avoid them. They're a very expensive way to get P and K into your onto your grass. So try and go for straights if you want. Go for like a 16% P or a 50% K or whatever. But yeah, the quick wins are key there. Low emission storage burden equipment as well, grass management as well. It's amazing what a reel and some pigtails will do for your grass management in the mid season. No passenger stock on the farm. These lucky cows shouldn't be there. Try and identify what cows are paying the bills or what stock is paying the bills, and what's not, who's been carried. A good start is half the work. So each couple of the 12 steps to reduce greenhouse gas emissions are contained on our website. We've got 5 of them. This is the dairy and the suckler one. It's also beef finishing, sheep and tillage. So you can find these there, and if you adhere to these 12 steps, you'll go a long way to putting more money in your pocket and reducing greenhouse gas and ammonia emissions. So these, as I said, are contained on our website, or contact your advisor, and we'll get one sent out to you. Thanks for your attention. If you want any more information on this, check out our website there. It's easy enough navigated towards the signpost advisory program on that, where you'll have lots more information on like sown clover and things like that. And also, if you want to check out what your emissions are on your farm, check out agnav.ie, and you can go in there through your Board BA login details and find your emissions there, and ways that you can maybe reduce your emissions. So with that, I'll hand back to you, Sean, there, and we'll
Okay,
take questions at the end.
great, James. Thank you very much for your presentation there. And you can just stop sharing your screen there, James, and I suppose
Yeah.
ask John to prepare. Now, just I suppose in the meantime, James, can you I suppose explain your role or what you offer farmers? Just I suppose very quickly there. Um,
Yeah, so I suppose my role essentially is to work with farmers throughout the region, both Teagasc actually and non-Teagasc as well, and to work with advisors to help reduce greenhouse gas and ammonia emissions. And my role is to try and help farmers to implement some of these things, like maybe selecting. Say we take if a farmer wants to sow clover, for example, I can maybe try and develop a reseeding plan and select grass varieties for the farmer to try and sow, to try and allow that clover to be, I suppose, to proliferate on in the sward. And I also, I suppose, can show farmers their greenhouse gas emissions as well, or what emissions they have produced as well, by going in through AgNav, by getting their emissions and developing a climate action plan for them as well. So
yeah,
we can implement some of these changes, and then the farmers can pick, I suppose, what actions they want to do, and I can put them into an action plan and send it out to them as well.
great. Okay. Very good, James. Thank you very much, and we'll be talking to you afterwards there for the Q&A session. So now we have up next John Conway, who's a dairy advisor for the Roscommon Longford region. And John, you can fire ahead there with your presentation.
Thanks very much, Sean, for the introduction there. Can you hear me there?
Yeah, everything's
Um,
fine. Yeah,
you can see my screen as well.
yeah, everything looks good.
Perfect. Yeah. So I suppose Sean there introduced me there as business and technology dairy advisor for Roscommon Longford. Recently taken over my role there since January, and just getting around to meeting all the clients, and just a presentation there tonight on applying the correct fertilizer this spring. So I suppose growing grass or grazing grass and growing grass. I suppose if we look if we analyze the profit monitors that were done probably throughout the country this year, it was probably obvious to see that maybe that we might have pulled back a little bit on our fertilizer uses due to maybe price and worrying maybe about the right method of application of the fertilizer, and maybe replacing it with more concentrate. And unfortunately, farmers probably didn't see the response in their production from that concentrate, and ultimately cost them money within the profit monitor the last few years. So I suppose if we look back, how do we get this grass to grow? I suppose if we looked at our slurry, making best use of our slurry and utilising that slurry in the best way possible. As you know, Longford and Roscommon are in the Zone B, so slurry is allowed to be spread from the 16th of January this year. And chemical nitrogen allowed being spread from the 30th of January. But I suppose the big thing there is that the rules are there, but we need to make sure that we're using them in the correct manner to protect our water quality, and ultimately getting the best use from our fertilizer to grow that grass and utilize it through our cows. So I suppose if we look at our slurry there, um, what type of slurry and what type of slurry do we go out with, and when and where exactly would we go with? So I suppose the recommendation there would be the thick slurry would be going to the silage ground, and the watery slurry would be going to the milking platform. And I suppose this time of the year, that recommended application rate would be 2,500 gallons to the acre, using less. So I suppose James would have went through the benefits there of using less, and why we should use it. And it's best practice to use low emission slurry spreading to get the best use of our slurry. I suppose if we go with the slurry, what do we do? Like, if we go with slurry, when do we apply our nitrogen? I suppose the best practice for spreading slurry is to spread your slurry, then wait 3 to 4 weeks to go with your round of nitrogen. I suppose probably maybe a little bit late for the first application of nitrogen at this stage. We probably should have been gone with that 15 to 16 units of protected urea to the acre to get that first kick of the grass and get us get cows out to it, and building our grass for the year coming ahead. I suppose the big question here is with fertilizer is, do we go or do we not go, or maybe what are the reasons that would make us go with fertilizer or not? So I suppose the big thing is there we need to look at a urea based fertilizer. James there would have alluded to the benefits of urea based fertilizer and why we should use it as opposed to can. I suppose the next big thing there is soil temperatures above 6 degrees. That's a big factor within the whether to go or not with nitrogen. So I suppose there's key things there. There's two key things just to keep an eye on for the minute. I suppose then looking then to see if the ground trafficable with a tractor. So I suppose it's probably was challenging maybe to get out some days in February with a tractor, and ground may not be trafficable at the time. So I suppose it's about keeping an eye on things, and walking the farm to see what way ground conditions are like. If you're going to go out with nitrogen, it's always recommended to go to a ryegrass sward and not be going to old grass swards, because you won't get the response from the nitrogen to grow that grass. So a ryegrass sward is recommended. I suppose we're going to go with a low amount, as I said there, the 15 to 16 units there starting off um, at that time of the year. And I suppose it's shown there in Moore Park about how much how we get it off how we get a better response of going with the littling off and getting that 55 to 60 units out between now and the 1st of April in 2 to 3 splits. So I suppose that's the recommendation there, to go with a low amount. A big thing then is no major rainfall in the few days afterwards. I suppose ultimately we want to get the best results from our fertilizer, and if it's washed away, it's no good to us for in terms of growing grass, and also it'll be no good in terms of our environmental factors. So there's just a picture there of checking the soil temperature there with a digital thermometer. As you can see, the soil temperature was 7 degrees on that day, and it was good to go with that shot of protected urea. I suppose then if we look then at the second application of fertilizer and slurry, now this is probably a rough estimate of what we should be going with, and it's probably every farm is unique to itself, and the rate should be applied as suits to your farm. And I suppose these are probably targets to achieve, and see if it all depends on ground conditions and weather conditions, I suppose. So that's what we should. These are probably more targets rather than anything else, I suppose. So I suppose 30 to 40 units of urea where slurry was spread. This is on the second application. Uh, I suppose then if we have an allowance for P 8612 plus sulfur in late March or April is recommended, and I suppose we'll talk a bit maybe about fertilizer register and seeing how where our allowances leave us be, and it's important to keep to pay attention to the allowances that you have in your farm. I suppose it's important then if we follow the cows with a watery slurry and on top up with 20 units 20 units of protect urea in the few weeks afterwards. As I said there, by the 1st of April, we should be trying to have that 55 to 60 units of N out, included in the slurry. I suppose then the big thing there is to walk your farm. Walking your farm is key from many aspects, I suppose, from whether you should be able to go out and graze, weather is challenging there at the minute. So to see what paddocks are suitable for grazing, also see how dry your farm is for nitrogen application, and I suppose to see where maybe general things on the farm need to be tidied up, I suppose. I suppose there's something there, just a reminder to anyone, I suppose, with the grazing season probably kicked off maybe in places, but a reminder there, have you enough reels for your grazing season coming ahead? Because I suppose ultimately it takes wire to grow grass, and the reels are probably the best thing out there to manage grass and get the best utilization from your grass. I suppose the two key questions there on that is what's your silage situation and what's your level of grass supply. So I suppose level of grass supply there we need to, that relates back to walking your farm to get and seeing what your average farm covers are at this time of the year, and see can we actually get out and graze that grass to maximize your production. And I suppose that's another factor that relates back to silage situation. I suppose with with last year being so wet, it could leave maybe a silage problem, or maybe a deficit in the silage situation. So I suppose they're all key things that make you go to grass or not, I suppose. I suppose then if we look at the ideal spring, and I suppose these are things that are probably in your control, that you've lots of grass in the spring, so you're getting that average farm cover of eight to 900 kilos of dry matter. Um, you're feeding the cows that 74 to 75% DMD silage. Good roadways and gaps, I suppose that they're critical in good grazing management. I suppose what access you have to paddocks, and it can leave the thing that bit easier if you have more access to paddocks and good roadways. So I suppose in terms of lameness and stuff like that, it's essential for good grazing. Yeah, so February paddocks there, as I said there, that you should have between 750 to 1,000 kilos dry matter on them. So, and then I said there to get that small bit of nitrogen out early, as I said, to get that 55 to 60 units of nitrogen out in the early spring. I suppose then if we look back then at our water quality, we're a team, so you have to play your part. Water quality affects everybody, as we see there with this year with the derogation dropping from 250 to 220. Look, there might be a lot of frustration out there, but I think farmers need to sit back and take a look at what grass their farm is ultimately growing and what they can stock their farm to. So I suppose they're two critical things in protecting our water quality to see can we get a shift in the direction of change. I suppose the big thing there is if we have soil samples and the soils come back index 4 for P, don't be spreading the slurry on them soils because ultimately you won't get the gain from them from spreading it, and it also affects our water. It could be damaging to our water quality down the line with too much phosphorus in it. So I suppose then, if we look then, the chemical fertilizer, it shouldn't be spread within 2 meters of the surface water. Um, and you must not spread organic manure within 5 meters of the surface water. And it's critical then to look at the buffer zones for the first 2 weeks and the last 2 weeks of the spreading season, where it goes to above 10 meters. And then another thing is then to look at the surface water where it slopes towards the water exceeds 10%. So to be critical then to I suppose be to look at where exactly you're putting your slurry. Uh, then if you go 15 meters of exposed carnivores or karst features such as swallowholes or exposed rock, and 20 meters of a lake shoreline. And then 25 to 200 meters of a water abstraction point for human consumption. So I suppose that's critical in terms of protected. So just if maybe that's a bit of a refresher there on buffer zones and where we should be with them and how we should use them. So that's just an example there of a buffer zone there on a farm in what way it was used. So I suppose that's just a reminder of what way we should be spreading slurry. I suppose the next thing then is what's critical is to walk the farm. As I said there, it's essential there. Maybe getting cows out, getting your grass grown, hitting your targets. I suppose getting that 30% graze by next week. To see or by the end of the week. Look, I suppose it mightn't be possible on a lot of farms to get that target, but it's something we should be trying to achieve, I suppose, as well. Get that 15 to 16 units of protected urea should be out at this stage, and be hitting that 55, 60 units in by the 1st of April. As I said, then the tick slurry then to the silage ground as it would be better quality in terms of P. And I suppose it's critical then. There's no need to empty the tanks. Now, I know that might be difficult when maybe when a contractor arrives into the yard, it might be more tempting to get the whole tank out for maybe handlingness sake. But I suppose in terms of utilizing your slurry, it's not the best way of doing it. And I suppose people maybe underestimate the value of slurry at times, and they need to maybe utilize that bit better and get more grass growing from slurry. And then I suppose, as I said again, maybe don't be going to them high index 4 P fields. So I suppose now some farms that might be possible to do. Maybe the whole farm could be index 4 for P. So I suppose it'd be critical to maybe trying to hit your silage fields with that slurry. So I suppose then with slurry and fertilizer, just to keep back there from the waterways, as I said there earlier on, to remind people of the buffer zones. And then I suppose to buy the reelers and wire if you need. As I said, then it takes wire there to grow grass. So I suppose just check to see how you are for reelers and if wire needed, just to give that right allocation to grass for your cows and get best utilization from it. So I suppose just to remember to grow more grass in 2024, you'll have to graze more in the spring. Okay, so that's probably a message there to bring home. I know it might not be possible at some stage, but it's a target that we need to try and achieve. In order to achieve that, spread a little bit of fertilizer, spread a little nitrogen in the beginning. to get that early start, get off on the front foot and start growing the grass early. That's my presentation, and thanks for listening. If there's any questions there, sure, I'll answer them there.
Okay, thank you very much there, John. Excellent presentation. And you just now we'll move on to the next section. We'll move over to Nathan, and Nathan, we have a number of questions that come in there, and just for the listeners, just keep your questions coming in. We'll be here for look at least another 10 minutes more or so, and we'll answer your questions. So keep them coming in there. Okay, Nathan.
Yeah, so there's a few questions in there. I can start off maybe the first one. So now John or James, whatever, you can answer yourselves. So what does the fertilizer register mean for 2024?
Yeah, well, I'll take that there, if you don't mind, James. I suppose the fertilizer register there came into play in September there of this year. So any fertilizer that was bought from the 1st September has to be recorded on the register. And every farmer had to register for the database, and they needed to declare their closing stock. So whatever fertilizer was on their farm on the 14th of September on 23, that needs to be recorded. And even if there was no fertilizer on the farm, it still needs to be recorded with the department in order to purchase fertilizer in the spring of 24.
Okay. Just another question there. What's the required fertilizer for index 3 soils or where no soil samples are taken?
Yeah, well, sure, I can take that one this time. Well, yeah, just from the outset there, now it's important to note that if there is no soil samples taken, depending on the stocking rate, that could be deemed at index 4 for P. So I think it's when you're over 130 kilos organic stocking density, you have to deem that index 4. So just be aware of that. But yeah, if you're at index 3, say and you want to apply, say, silage fertilizer, you're talking about 16 units an acre for P and about and 100 units for K, 100 units an acre for K on index 3. I suppose that's taken, I suppose, good quality perennial ryegrass sward, relatively recently reseeded, not kind of old kind of pasture that you could drop it by 20 units of K if it's older kind of sward, maybe around 10 unit down to 10 units, say, of per acre of P for that. So
Okay, that's grand, James. Just another question then on fertilizer straits. Recent samples on silage ground with index 1 and P and index 2 for K. Should I be looking at straits for P and K or compounds like 18612?
yeah, look, it all depends what way you want to kind of match up your P and K allowances. Like, so if you take index 1, right, so you need to spread about 32 units an acre of P and 140 units an acre of K for silage. Say we take silage for example on this, because look, grazing is great. Like, it depends on how heavily you're stocked in terms of grazing and the quality of the grass there. But silage is a bit maybe easier to explain. So if you're at index 1, it's 32 units of P of P per acre and 140 units per acre of K. At index 2, then you can drop that by 8. So units, so it's 24 units an acre of phosphorus and 120 then units an acre for K. Now you can make that up then if it's got slurry. Like, if you take, it got, say, 3,000 gallons an acre of slurry, 1,000 gallons an acre applied below emission slurry spreading is worth 9 units of N, 5 units of P, and 32 units of K. So you can multiply that up. If it got 3,000 gallons an acre, you've hit your about 90 units there of K, and you're at your 15 units of P. So in that situation there, if you're at index 3, for example, you've actually 3,000 gallons an acre of slurry is all you require for P and K. You just need to go with your straight N in that situation. If the question was about index 1, index 2, you go 3,000 gallons an acre, you're well on your way to hitting the K requirement for, it's up by another, if you're at index 1 for K, you're up another 40 units on top of that 100, so you're at 140 units required. Now, really, if you are down at index 1 or 2 for P and K, you really should be using slurry on your silage ground. It'll be very, very expensive for you to just go and try and grow your silage at those low indexes with just chemical. You will have to be going with slurry, and it's ideal. It's an ideal place to go with slurry.
That's grand, James. Yeah. Um, just another question there. When's the best time to take soil samples?
John, do you want to
Yeah,
jump into
I
that?
can take that one there. Yeah, so I suppose their soil samples are valid for 4 years. So after the 15th of September of the given year, well, it would be the time soil samples will be taken. And I suppose the best time to take them is how long the field have been closed off, so there's no animals within the field, that no chemical or organic fertilizer has been applied to the field. And um, I suppose to maybe the conditions to take the samples. So I suppose in dry conditions would be the best time to take them soil samples, because it would be difficult to lift the core samples with the if it's wet weather. I suppose, and also there where to take the samples. So don't take them on top of dung pats, or don't take them in around corrugated areas such as a drinking trough, and to always walk the W within your field.
Okay, that's grand, John. Just another question here. Is it advisable to spread slurry on recently reseeded ground?
Yeah, look, it's I suppose it all depends on the P and the K index of that ground. Relatively recently reseeded ground, yeah, look, you'd probably leave it a bit to settle. It would have actually got a substantial amount of maybe P and K at sowing. You're going to be applying at 3 bags of 10, 10, 20 when you're sowing it anyway. So, you will already have probably applied a large amount of K, try and get that root that seed rooted and established. But yeah, look, it'll just, I suppose, incorporate back into your normal slurry regime. After the grass is taken and grazed.
Grand, James. So how recent do soil samples have to be taken for the fertilizer register?
Yeah,
Do you want to
I'll
go with that,
take
John?
that there. Yeah. So soil samples are valid for this year from the 15th of September 2020. But I suppose it's also advisable to have your samples as recently up to date, going forward, to have your best accurate results in order for a fertilizer plan. So the 15th September 2020 they're valid for, but I'd also recommend maybe to get them updated if they're gone out that long.
Okay. What's the best time to spread lime, and what height does the grass have to be when spreading?
There's no real, I suppose, bad time to spread lime. Ideal opportunities are maybe if you've got a good autumn time of the year to get in and spread lime. It's a bit more difficult on grazing ground in the mid-season because grass is recovering so much, and you're getting 22 tons dropped off the lorry, like, so you need area. But yeah, after you graze or after you cut silage, could be key. A good opportunity, so either first cut, second cut, whatever. Or if a good spring, a good autumn, recovery isn't as quick, and possibly allow you to get out there on grazing ground. And yeah, look, you don't be spreading lime on heavy covers. Obviously, it's going to stay on the leaf, and it's going to not be palatable for the animal to graze. So you would need it grazed, or it can be recovering back somewhat, but just that you're not into a kind of a flush grass like the picture behind me, for example, or John there.
And, just another question here. How do you register fertilizer with the department?
Yeah, so I suppose once you have your closing stock declared and you're registered, you're up in the system. It'll be the merchant that'll upload the fertilizer on the database. So whatever merchant you're buying your fertilizer off should be asking you for your herd number, and they will put up whatever fertilizer you buy of them. I suppose it's important to note there anyone that's buying fertilizer from Northern Ireland, that they need to declare their own import themselves of that fertilizer within their own ag food systems. So for most people, it'll be the merchant that will put up in the system. And if you're from Northern Ireland, you do need if you're bringing in from Northern Ireland, you need to declare your import.
Thanks, John. So just another question there. When is the cut-off date for taking soil samples for those in the acre scheme?
Yeah, so I suppose they need to be uploaded to the department by May this year. And I suppose the soil samples can't be anyway past. They need to be from the 1st of January 2022 because they were taken within the duration of the scheme.
Okay, that's grand. I think that's most of the questions there now. Sean, if you want to take over.
Okay. Yeah, that's great, Nathan. Thanks very much for that. Great to see so many questions as coming in. Um, Look, we're coming near the end, so look, I want to thank both James and John for their excellent presentations, and thanks to Nathan again for covering the Q&A session, and thanks to everybody who signed in this evening. Good to see a large crowd signing in, and I suppose people are interested, I suppose, in getting prepared for the coming spring, and so hopefully the weather will improve and get a chance to. I suppose it's important to get fertilizer out, but to get the correct level and get it in the correct areas and that as well. So it's an important role for you all. And I suppose at the end of the day, it's all about growing grass, and we're also aware of the environmental impact of spreading fertilizer as well. Um, so look at 2 weeks' time, this date fortnight, we'll be back again, and it will be a farm schemes update. And I was looking at as many schemes that are relevant there at the moment, and covering those for the hour or so. So anyone who's registered tonight will get the reminder emails again about that next webinar. So, and we'll be delighted to see you all again. So, all the best this evening, and good luck to everyone. Bye now.